I was driving my car when my husband called me and said, "Goodbye, darling. The insurance money is mine. I'm finally free from you." Then my car lost control and fell off a bridge. The rain had stopped only an hour before Rachel Mitchell pulled out of her driveway in Portland, Oregon. The sky remained an unforgiving shade of gray, heavy with unspoken threats, and the road still wore the shine of wet asphalt. She adjusted the heater in her car, rubbing her hands together before placing them back on the steering wheel. The morning chill clung to her skin like regret. Dylan hadn't said much that morning. He was lying on the couch, a blanket pulled up to his chest, claiming he had caught a bad flu. His expression was distant, unreadable, as it had been for weeks now. Months, maybe. Rachel couldn't remember the last time he looked at her like he used to, with warmth, with familiarity. Instead, there was only cold politeness, the kind you'd expect from a stranger offering you directions. She had told herself it was just a phase. 10 years of marriage weren't easy, and rough patches came and went. But something about Dylan's silence lately felt permanent. As she crossed the bridge that connected the highway to the school district on the far side of town, her phone buzzed in the cup holder. She glanced at the screen. Dylan. It was strange. He never called her this early. She pressed the speakerphone button. "Hey, you feel any better?" she asked, her voice cautious but still coated with habitual concern. Silence. Then came his voice. It was flat, hollow. "Goodbye, darling." Rachel's heart skipped. She blinked, tightening her grip on the wheel. "What?" His next words sliced through the static like a blade. "The insurance money is mine. I'm finally free from you." Rachel's breath caught. "What the hell are you?" But he had already hung up. Her vision blurred. The words echoed in her head with unnatural clarity, louder than the hum of her tires on wet pavement, louder than the wind clawing at the car. The insurance money. Free from you. She felt her foot falter on the gas pedal, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her car veered slightly left, then overcorrected to the right. The bridge beneath her tires offered no forgiveness. She screamed. The guardrail blurred past her peripheral vision as the vehicle skidded uncontrollably. Her body slammed against the door as the car twisted, a violent ballet of steel and momentum. There was a sound of metal shrieking against metal, glass exploding like tiny screams. Then weightlessness. Time stopped. She saw sky, then water, then sky again, and then with a deafening splash, the car hit the river. The force of the impact threw her forward against the seatbelt. Her breath was knocked out of her lungs, pain radiating from her ribs. Water surged through the broken windshield, pouring in like a living thing, drowning everything in sight. Cold, black, endless. Rachel's fingers clawed at the seatbelt. Her body fought to stay awake, to resist the pressure crushing her chest, the freezing water numbing her limbs. She gasped, taking in a mouthful of river water, choking, coughing, eyes wide in terror. But something strange happened. Just as the car began its slow descent into darkness, something caught, a movement above, a glint, a shape loomed in the distance, headlights, a truck, maybe, through the river's surface. She saw it pause on the bridge, brakes squealing, and then someone shouting. The voice didn't reach her, not really, but she imagined it did. She needed to imagine it did. Her hand pressed against the ceiling, her other tugging the seatbelt release. It wouldn't budge. Her vision darkened. The cold became pain, then numbness. Her mind started to slip, float, retreat. And yet, something in her refused to let go. A shadow moved outside the car. Something banged against the passenger side. Hard. A faint beam of light filtered in, slicing through the murky water. There was a flash of orange. A safety vest? Hands. A crowbar. The sound of glass cracking again. And then air. Rachel didn't know how or when her body left the car. Only that one moment she was submerged in near silence, and the next, someone was dragging her up, breaking through to the surface. She coughed violently as they pulled her onto a gravel riverbank. The sky above now impossibly wide and bright compared to the suffocating blackness below. Voices swirled around her, indistinct. She felt a blanket over her shoulders. Questions. Sirens. Her name being called. but all she could hear was that voice. The insurance money is mine. I'm finally free from you. Rachel closed her eyes as a paramedic checked her vitals. A woman's voice asked if she could speak, but she barely nodded. There would be time for questions later. Time to process. Right now, there was only one thing she knew for certain. Dylan had tried to kill her, and she was still alive. Rachel lay still beneath the hospital's fluorescent lights, a thin blanket drawn to her chest, the antiseptic scent of gauze and latex surrounding her like an invisible fog. She was alive, yes, but her body was a battlefield of bruises, her mind a labyrinth of fractured memories and rising dread. The nurses move around her with quiet efficiency, checking monitors, replacing 4 fluids, charting vital signs. Every beep, every flicker of light felt too loud, too artificial. Nothing about her recovery felt real. The doctor told her she was lucky. That word echoed in her head like a cruel joke. Lucky. A long-haul truck driver named Henry Grayson had seen her car slide off the bridge. He said he'd stopped to wipe rain from his windshield just in time to notice the blur of metal and water. Had he looked up a second later, there might have been no trace. He had called emergency services immediately and, without waiting, rushed down to the riverbank. His voice had trembled as he recounted how he saw the car submerge, how he dove in any way. They said he'd risked his life to pull her out. A local hero. Rachel wanted to thank him, and she would. But first, she had to understand the why she had survived, and why her husband hadn't even shown up at the hospital. 3 days passed. Her body slowly regained strength, her injuries healing faster than expected. Her left leg was fractured, her ribs bruised, and her lungs still strained from the near drowning, but her mind, that was the part no medication could soothe. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his voice again, that final, detached sentence, the cruel certainty of it. By the time she could sit upright, a detective came to speak with her. Officer Barnes, middle-aged, soft-spoken, with a notepad too clean for the kind of things he'd likely seen in his career. He asked standard questions. Where she was headed, what she remembered if she'd been distracted. Rachel played dumb. She told him she remembered losing control, the rain, the skid, and then nothing. A blur. She knew instinctively not to reveal Dylan's call. Not yet. Not until she understood what she was up against. She watched Barnes closely as he nodded, scribbled, asked follow-ups, and then, as casually as someone mentioning the weather, he added, "Funny thing, your life insurance policy was updated not too long ago. Doubled, in fact. We usually check that kind of stuff in accidents like these." Rachel's heart didn't race. It sank. "Oh," she said, her voice steady. "I didn't realize." He gave a short nod and closed the notebook. Sometimes people don't. Most of the time it's a formality. Could have been your husband who filed it. He's your primary beneficiary, right? Rachel forced a small smile. Yeah, probably him. Officer Barnes stood and thanked her, said they were treating the crash as an accident unless something new came up. She thanked him. As soon as he left the room, she turned her face to the window and let the full weight of his words settle into her bones. Dylan hadn't even bothered to visit. Not once. Not even to keep up appearances. She asked the nurse to borrow a phone. Dylan didn't pick up. Not the first time, not the second. On the third call, it went straight to voicemail. No message. No check-in. Nothing. It was as though she had already died and he had simply moved on. Rachel pressed her hands against her thighs to stop them from trembling. She needed to get home, not to rest, but to see what he had left behind, or worse, what he had cleaned up. She didn't trust the hospital room. Too many eyes, too many ears. And her instinct screamed that what Dylan had done went deeper than a single moment of betrayal. There was planning behind it. Confidence. He had been counting on that phone, call being the last thing she'd ever hear. 2 days later, she was discharged. A wheelchair, some crutches, prescriptions, a stack of instructions she barely read. A volunteer helped her into a cab. Her house, their house, looked the same as always. White shutters, blue door, flower bed she had planted. The banality of it stung. Dylan was waiting inside, already dressed for the role. He opened the door before she could ring the bell, smiling in that polite, rehearsed way. Rachel, he said, stepping forward to take the bag from her lap. "Thank God. I've been so worried." She looked up at him, expression unreadable. "Were you?" He faltered for half a second, then laughed softly. "Of course. I didn't know what to do. You were unconscious for days." She let him wheel her in, saying nothing. The house smelled the same, but it felt alien, colder. Her things were untouched. Pictures still hung on the hallway walls. Their wedding photo, a trip to Yosemite, a beach in Florida. All lies now, every frame a frozen moment of fiction. Over the next few days, Rachel pretended. She accepted his help moving around the house, let him cook, talk, fuss over pillows and medication schedules. She let him believe the accident had taken something from her mind, as if she had forgotten. But in truth, her senses had never been sharper. Every movement, every word he spoke, she dissected for meaning, and slowly a pattern emerged. Dylan never left her alone for more than a few minutes. He took her phone to make sure it was charging. He insisted on adjusting her medications. When she mentioned wanting to review some mail, he said he had already handled the bills. There was no affection in his care, only precision, control. Then, late one night, Rachel waited until his breathing was deep and steady, then rolled herself slowly down the hallway to the office. She knew the password to his laptop. He hadn't bothered to change it. Inside, she found folders tucked into strange corners of the desktop. PDF files, scanned documents, emails flagged in bold. One file was titled Policy Adjustment 2025. Another was a receipt for a wire transfer. And then there were emails, dozens of them, exchanged with someone named Amanda Lewis. She opened one. "Thanks for handling the paperwork. As soon as this clears, we can start fresh. No ties, no risks, just you and me." Rachel leaned back in the chair, breath shallow. Amanda Lewis. The name felt familiar. She opened another file, a scanned image of a business card. Amanda Lewis, senior insurance specialist. Her picture was in the corner, blonde, smiling, attractive in a corporate, manufactured kind of way. A sound behind her made Rachel jump. She spun the wheelchair, heart hammering, but it was nothing, just a fridge humming to life in the kitchen. She exhaled. Carefully, she closed the files, logged out, and returned to bed. But as she lay there, staring into the dark, she knew one thing for certain. The man sleeping beside her had already tried once to erase her from the world, and he might be planning to try again. Rachel began to catalog every gesture, every sentence. Every oddly timed touch Dylan offered her like an involuntary shudder. She had never realized how many small acts of dominance were laced into his kindness before, how he took over the space around her, how he placed a hand on the back of her wheelchair not as support, but as silent command. He was acting out the role of a doting husband with such clinical precision, frightened her more than outright hostility would have. There was performance in every word he spoke, a careful script being followed, and she knew better than to improvise. The house was quiet most days. Too quiet. Dylan claimed to be working from home to take care of her, but Rachel noticed the phone calls he took behind closed doors, the hushed tones, the long hours where he disappeared into the garage or the shed behind the garden. The Amanda Lewis emails still haunted her, though she dared not revisit them yet. That night in the office had been a risk. If Dylan suspected she had seen anything, the illusion they were both clinging to would shatter, probably with violent consequences. Instead, she focused on observation. She started keeping a notebook hidden beneath the cushion of her wheelchair. Short sentences, details, times, what he said, what he didn't say, when he left, how long he was gone. She tracked changes in his behavior, when he was more attentive, when he grew impatient, when his mask slipped for a fraction of a second. It was always subtle, but once she had seen it, she couldn't unsee it. There was no empathy in his eyes, only calculation. One afternoon, while Dylan was out running errands, Rachel wheeled herself to the upstairs hallway, something she hadn't done yet since returning home. She had been careful, waiting for the right moment. The hallway felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else's life. She entered the guest room first, a place they hadn't used in years. Nothing but dust and old boxes. Then she turned toward their bedroom. Her bedroom, she corrected herself. It didn't belong to both of them anymore. She scanned the room, her eyes skimming over familiar furniture, the matching nightstands, the framed picture of them at Crater Lake. Then something caught her attention. On the far corner of the ceiling, just above the wardrobe, was a small black lens embedded into the molding. It was barely visible, disguised expertly, but she knew what she was looking at. A camera. Her breath halted. She followed the angle. Its view pointed directly at the bed. Her mouth went dry. She scanned the room again, looking for wires, receivers, any sign of where the footage went. There was nothing obvious. She backed out slowly, careful not to disturb anything. Once in the hallway, she turned her chair toward the garage. Dylan never let her go in there. He always said it was a mess, full of power tools and dangerous clutter, but she needed to see for herself. It took her nearly 10 minutes to get down the narrow ramp into the garage. Her muscles ached from the effort, but adrenaline dulled the pain. The garage smelled of oil and old wood, and the lights flickered as she turned them on. At first glance, there was nothing alarming, just toolboxes, boxes stacked high, gardening supplies. But in the back, beside the workbench, she found a small black case labeled with masking tape. Old tech. Inside were wires, cables, lenses, memory cards, and a manual for a home surveillance system. The model matched the camera she had seen upstairs. She closed the case and stared at it for a long time. Her entire life inside this house had been recorded without her knowledge. The idea that Dylan had been watching her, while she slept, while she cried, while she was most vulnerable, made her stomach turn. It wasn't just control. It was possession. Back in her room, she sat in the dim light, not moving, barely breathing, the weight of the discovery settling deep into her chest. She was not safe, not even here, especially not here. But she also couldn't run. Not yet. Not without everything she needed to expose him. Every instinct screamed that Dylan wasn't just manipulative. He was methodical. She needed more than suspicion. She needed evidence. Real, undeniable, prosecutable evidence. That night, she waited until she heard Dylan's soft snores from the couch downstairs, then turned on her old phone, a burner she'd used once for international school programs. She texted only one person. "Lena, I need your help. Can we talk in person?" No calls. No texts. Just say yes. The response came less than a minute later. "Yes. Tomorrow. Noon. Coffee shop off Main. Be careful." Rachel deleted the messages and hid the phone again. The next day, she convinced Dylan she wanted to try going outside just for fresh air. He didn't object, but he insisted on pushing her down the driveway. She smiled and thanked him. Once he was back inside, she waited for a neighbor to walk past, Mrs. Calder, walking her dog, and asked for a quick favor. Within minutes, Lena pulled up in a nondescript sedan and helped Rachel inside. They sat in the back corner of the coffee shop, the hum of espresso machines and background music drowning out their conversation. Lena's face was tight with concern as she listened. Rachel didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She spoke clearly and precisely, laying out everything. Dylan's phone call, the insurance change, the camera, the emails, the control. Lena's expression hardened with each new revelation. "This isn't just emotional abuse," Lena said. "He's laying the groundwork for something worse. You said he has access to your meds." Rachel nodded. "He's been managing all of it. Says he doesn't want me to overdo it." Lena leaned forward. "You need to record him. Start tonight. Audio, video, anything. I'll talk to a friend in the department. Off the record. But we need more than what you told me. We need him to hang himself." Rachel felt her resolve sharpen. "I'm done pretending." Lena placed a small device in her hand. "Keep this with you. Always. And if anything changes, anything, you call me. I'll be there." Rachel was back home before Dylan noticed she had gone. She told him she needed rest, let him believe she was weary and fragile. But her mind was alive now, focused, alert. That night, as she lay in bed, she turned on the recorder and placed it under the pillow. Dylan walked in minutes later, kissed her on the forehead and whispered, "Sleep tight, honey." Big day tomorrow. Rachel closed her eyes, her hand clenching beneath the blanket. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but she would be ready. Rachel began her mornings with a mask, so finely tuned it almost convinced her. She let her hands tremble when Dylan brought her breakfast, accepted the pills he offered without protest, and forced the corners of her mouth upward when he touched her shoulder and asked if she had slept. Her performance had evolved into something sharp, deliberate, and deadly, an act that required as much energy as any physical recovery. But beneath the surface, she was meticulous. Every hour she was awake was spent observing, cataloging, recording. The audio device Lena had given her became her new lifeline. She kept it close, sewn discreetly inside the lining of her cardigan, tucked under the wheelchair's cushion when she moved about. Her instincts were razor-sharp now, and she trusted them more than anything Dylan said or did. She listened carefully to his words, the tone behind them, the pauses, the slips. The more she let him believe she was vulnerable, the more careless he became. She started sowing subtle seeds, letting him think she was slowly recovering fragments of the crash, allowing just enough to hint that something was resurfacing. It began with offhand remarks. I had this strange dream last night. I was driving and heard someone say something awful. It felt so real. Dylan would always respond with a calm smile, his eyes never leaving her. Dreams could be tricky like that, he'd say, brushing her shoulder, and she'd nod, pretending to agree. But each time she said something like that, she noticed a shift, a flicker of worry behind his gaze, a faint hesitation before he responded. That hesitation told her everything. Dylan was beginning to doubt whether she had truly forgotten, and the closer she danced to that edge, the more he'd show his hand. Late one evening, Rachel heard him on the phone through the crack beneath the office door. His voice was hushed, urgent. She couldn't hear every word, but she caught enough. No, she's acting strange, keeps bringing up the accident. I don't know how much she remembers. A pause. We need to move things up. She recorded the entire call from her position in the hallway. When Dylan emerged, she feigned a startled look. Couldn't sleep, she mumbled. Thought I'd try reading. He offered to help her back to the bedroom. She didn't protest. The closer he was, the better she could study him. The next day, he suggested something unexpected. What do you think about a weekend away? Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet. Peaceful. I think it would help you recover. Rachel knew instantly this was no innocent suggestion. There was urgency behind it. Too perfectly timed with that phone call. Still, she let her eyes widen with naive hope. That sounds nice, she said slowly, like it could be good for us. He smiled, and she could see in his expression the belief that he was back in control. Lena was waiting at the same coffee shop the next morning when Rachel wheeled into the back entrance. This time, Rachel's voice was steady, methodical. He wants to take me to a cabin. This weekend. Lena's response was immediate. He's going to try again. I know. They devised a plan in low tones, their conversation cloaked by the soft murmur of nearby conversations and the hiss of steaming milk. Rachel would go, but this time she would not be alone. Lena had already looped in her contact, Detective Ruiz, an experienced investigator with a quiet reputation for exposing domestic fraud and violent deception. He would secure the necessary warrants, prepare surveillance support, and, more importantly, remain nearby during the trip. All they needed was one solid moment of confession. One misstep. Rachel would make sure Dylan gave it to them. By Friday, Dylan had packed the car himself, choosing every item, from the food to the blankets, with care that Rachel could only interpret as arrogance, as if he were already scripting the final chapter in his plan. She didn't resist when he guided her into the passenger seat, just smiled at him with soft eyes and said, "Thank you for doing this for us." The drive was long, winding through back roads and dense forest. The deeper they went, the fewer cell towers appeared, until Rachel's phone showed no signal. She didn't panic. Lena had already prepared a secondary device, embedded into Rachel's medical bag, linked to a secure GPS system. If Dylan thought isolation was his weapon, he was about to learn otherwise. Somewhere between the base of a wooded hill and the start of a gravel road, Rachel reached beneath her seat for a bottle of water Dylan had dropped earlier. Her fingers brushed against something sharp. Paper. She retrieved it carefully without drawing attention. It was a thick envelope, sealed poorly, with her name printed in block letters on the front. Inside were photocopies of her life insurance policy, the latest version, adjusted, enhanced benefits in the event of accidental death, including a substantial payout for deaths occurring during travel. Signed by Dylan, dated a month before the crash. At the bottom, Amanda Lewis's signature as the overseeing agent. Rachel folded the envelope and slipped it under her blanket. The cabin was secluded, framed by evergreens in a dark sky, fast approaching nightfall. Dylan led her inside, setting logs in the fireplace, unpacking groceries, opening wine. The silence in the room felt oppressive. He moved behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders. "Do you feel okay?" he asked softly. Rachel nodded, tilting her head just enough to make eye contact. "I feel safe with you." He smiled again, that same smile. But now it was cracked with pride, with the confidence of someone who thought he had won. As night fell, Rachel excused herself to the bedroom and activated the secondary recorder Lena had hidden in her bag. It was small, designed to transmit audio directly to a nearby listening post. She placed it under the lamp and returned to the living room. They sat together by the fire. Dylan poured her a second glass of wine and watched her drink. Then he spoke. "You know," he said, swirling the liquid in his glass, "sometimes life gives us chances to start over, to correct things that were never quite right." Rachel tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He stared into the flames. "Just that some endings are necessary. Some things are better off gone." She said nothing, just nodded and let the fire crackle in the space between them. Lena was hearing everything. The night settled into a deceptive calm around the cabin, with only the faint crackle of burning logs and the whisper of wind brushing against the wooden panels. Inside, Rachel sat with her back straight, her body stiff despite the warmth of the fire. Dylan moved around her with the slow confidence of someone who believed time was on his side. He poured more wine, refilled the wood in the fireplace, and offered her a blanket she didn't need. Every gesture felt calculated, not affectionate, but she played along, murmuring thanks, maintaining the illusion of trust, while the small recording device continued its silent work from the bedroom. She waited for him to lower his guard, and eventually he did. Dylan grew looser with his words as the hours slipped by. He laughed at old memories, spoke wistfully about the future, and kept circling the same theme: reinvention, starting fresh, closing painful chapters. When he thought she wasn't listening, he let the edge return to his voice. "Some people are just stuck, you know? Can't see what's coming. So they hold on too tight, and it ruins them. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands." Rachel nodded slowly, letting her eyes drift toward the shadows in the corner of the room, as if she didn't catch the weight behind his sentence. But she heard every word, and so did Lena, listening from a part surveillance van stationed just over the ridge. The moment was building. She could feel it, but she needed him to say more. She rose from the couch, feigning dizziness, and Dylan rushed to her side. She let herself lean into him, her voice unsteady. "I've been thinking about that day, Dylan. The accident. Some part is still fuzzy, but others, they're coming back." He froze just for a second, then he forced a smile. "It's probably just trauma. You shouldn't dwell on it." "But I remember something strange," she continued, keeping her tone soft, almost absent-minded. "Your voice. On the phone, you said something about insurance, about being free." Dylan's hand gripped her arm a little tighter. "You must be confused. You were barely conscious when they pulled you out. Don't go rewriting history." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Then tell me the truth. Did you call me that morning?" His face hardened. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then looked away. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "You were never supposed to hear that." Silence swallowed the room. Her heart pounded. She glanced toward the hallway, where the recorder was catching every word. "I didn't mean for it to be painful," Dylan added, stepping back. "You were miserable, Rachel. You can't deny that. We were both suffocating. I just sped things up. By killing me? His jaw tightened. By freeing us? You tried to murder me for a payout, she said, louder now, letting her anger surface. You changed my insurance policy. You planned everything. I saw the documents. I found Amanda Lewis. I know everything, Dylan. He moved toward her quickly, but before he could touch her, headlights flashed through the window. A car engine cut outside. Then came the unmistakable sound of boots crunching over gravel. Doors slammed. Voices barked. Dylan turned toward the door just as it burst open. Lena entered first, followed by two officers in tactical vests. Their weapons were holstered, but their presence filled a room like a breaking storm. Dylan Mitchell, Lena said sharply, you are under arrest for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. Dylan's mouth fell open, confusion bleeding into panic. What? You can't be serious. This is a mistake. But Lena stepped forward, holding up a recorder sealed in an evidence bag. We have everything. Your voice, your admission, the financial records, the surveillance system in your house. It's over. Rachel watched as Dylan was handcuffed, his protest becoming more erratic. She's lying. She's manipulating you. She was never supposed to survive. Rachel didn't speak. She didn't move. She just sat still, breathing slowly, letting the wave of justice roll over the room. She felt no triumph, no joy, only a deep, hollow exhale of relief. It was finished. Back in Portland, the news moved quickly. Dylan's arrest made headlines in the local paper, but Rachel didn't read them. The trial came and went with little resistance. He had no viable defense once the recordings were played. Amanda Lewis, under pressure, turned state's witness. She admitted to her role in facilitating the fraudulent insurance changes. She claimed she had no knowledge of the murder attempt, but her involvement was enough for a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. Dylan was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Rachel didn't attend the sentencing. She didn't need to. Months passed. She sold the house, moved into a small apartment closer to downtown. The city noises comforted her. She started volunteering with a local support group for women in abusive relationships, and it was there, during one of the late-night meetings, that someone asked her what surviving felt like. Rachel thought for a long time before answering. It doesn't feel like winning, she said softly. It feels like waking up every day and remembering I wasn't supposed to be here. But I am, and that has to mean something. She began writing shortly after. The pages came slowly at first, snippets of memory, fragments of emotion, but they grew. Her story wasn't about Dylan. It wasn't even about the betrayal. It was about silence, survival, and the small, nearly invisible forms of violence people endure before they realize they're being erased. By spring, the manuscript was finished. She titled it The Quiet Escape, and it was published under her full name, Rachel Mitchell. The proceeds from the book went to fund a shelter for women fleeing domestic manipulation and financial abuse. And every morning, when she drove across that same bridge where her story had nearly ended, she let the silence of the river remind her, not of what she lost, but of what she reclaimed. Not survival, not justice, freedom.